Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. One of the most interesting revelations of my research this year was coming across the Red River cart, created by the Métis, the indigenous people from the area known today as Manitoba, Canada. The wooden cart was widely used throughout the plains in the 19th century to haul buffalo meat and hides during their yearly hunts. The Métis also used it to move their belongings when they were forced to migrate from Canada into the United States, a move that occurred through the demise of the bison hunt and the influx of European settlers. But my presentation is not entirely about this cart. Instead, the main focus here is lowrider bikes. These bikes have their origins in Chicano car clubs that work together to customize lowrider cars, go cruising, and show off their artistic skills at competitions. This process of collective making inspired lowrider bikes as an alternative for those too young to drive cars. Like the cars, these are built in small groups or clubs that go cruising through their neighborhood to show off their work. But how do we get from the Red River cart to these lowrider bikes? The connections between the two may seem apparent. They are both simple two-wheeled machines without fuel-powered engines. Both are easy to take apart and put back together, allowing for customization. And both are inspired by European means of transportation, but upgraded with indigenous materials. What isn't as apparent is how these bikes help indigenous youth work through a process of decolonization and learn about indigenous cultures from the Great Lakes area. To demonstrate how this process of decolonization was set in motion, I'm going to introduce Dylan Miner's ongoing art project, Native Kids Ride Bikes. This work started in 2011 and over the past 5 years has gone through various iterations based in the US and Canada. In this presentation, I am focusing on the first series of workshops held in East Lansing, Michigan, in collaboration with high school students from the Indigenous Youth Empowerment Project and East Lansing High School's Native American Club. Miner focused the project to work with intertribal youth, using workshops to teach them about the history and culture of indigenous people in the Great Lakes area where he was raised. For this series of workshops, Miner invited Anishinaabe elders and adults and college students to work with the youth participants. Together, this intergenerational group held discussions about the history and cultures of local indigenous people, specifically the Anishinaabe, whose 7 grandfather teachings guiding the workshop. In this collaborative space, the participants came together over 6 months to produce a series of 7 lowrider bikes. These were exhibited at Michigan State University's Lookout Gallery in the fall of 2011. I propose that Native Kids Ride Bikes uses workshops and lowrider bikes as part of a socially engaged decolonial process, using historical and cultural teachings as tools of resistance to cultural disintegration and to reintroduce knowledge and traditions that were once part of everyday life but have nearly been lost. Implementing this strategy, Miner uses bikes in a process of recovering traditional cosmologies while remaining grounded in the contemporary realities of detribalization, displacement, and globalization. To define a socially engaged decolonial practice, I show how Native Kids Ride Bikes connects participants with an Anishinaabe worldview of sustainability, a way of approaching the world that sees all living things as connected and requires each other for continued survival. Participants learn to consider the importance of people-powered vehicles as alternatives to fossil fuel-burning modes of transportation. Through Miner's methodology of visiting, I show how he uses workshops to bring youth participants together with elders, creating a space of collaboration, conversation, and making in which everyone contributes to the design and construction of the bikes. It is through these workshops that I show how Miner uses a decolonial pedagogy with the 7 grandfather teachings to generate a dialogue with participants about indigenous culture. Through this approach, I demonstrate how Miner incorporates a decolonial process in his work and puts forth a strategy to reconnect youth with cultures and traditions indigenous to where they live. To help define a decolonial practice, I propose decolonization is a process that actively challenges the reduction of indigenous people for racial classification that subjectifies them and turns them into less than human beings. This definition captures the disconnection faced by indigenous people from their history, culture, and spirituality. As Gerald Tyke Alfred claims, this spiritual disconnection leads to the disintegration and deculturing of indigenous people. Through Native Kids Ride Bike, Miner uses a decolonial process to help youth connect with indigenous teachings through making art. To get a full picture of this project, I take us back to the Red River cart. Miner first came across this cart in 2010 while conducting research at the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian. This was done through a research grant he received from the museum to study indigenous modes of transportation used in the Great Lakes area in the 18th and 19th century. Specifically, to learn how his ancestors traveled before fossil fuel burning cars and coal burning trains were introduced in the area. In turn, this research inspired Miner's Native Kids Ride Bikes, using the Red River cart as a model for his project to teach young people about living in a way that doesn't harm the environment. As models of environmental sustainability, the bikes were the starting point of the project, but Miner didn't select just any bikes. He chose to incorporate lowrider bikes, which he learned to build in his youth with neighborhood friends. For Miner, Chicano lowriding is an indigenous way of moving through the world that contrasts the speed needed to succeed in the contemporary capitalist world. In this manner, lowriders provide the youth with a different way of looking at the world that isn't focused on moving through life as fast as possible. Instead, the bike's slow pace inspires them to use their body to power the vehicle and take time to experience the world around them. But the project wasn't only about creating lowrider bikes. Miner brought the group together to learn and make things as a way of building community. This way of making art is not only focused on making objects. It includes active engagement through group participation that results in experiences that become part of the artwork. For Miner, this participatory experience is a focus of his methodology of visiting, used as a guide for many of his projects. What this means is that the workshops are used to bring youth participants together with elders and create a space of collaboration, conversation, and making where everyone is able to contribute to the design and constructions of the bikes. In this manner, the workshops provide a space where aesthetics are explored through hands-on experience that includes conversations about Anishinaabe cultural materials and forms like the deer hide drum, the Métis panel bag, peyote stitch beading, and leatherworking. Through this pedagogical relationship with making, participants engage with each other while learning about the history of these crafts and how they relate to people's everyday lives. As part of this process, participants were introduced to the 7 grandfather teachings. These are composed by the following 7 concepts: wisdom, love, respect, bravery, truth, humility, and honesty. This series of teachings were a basic part of Anishinaabe culture that provided people with the basic tools to live their lives. And each bike that was built reflect one of these teachings. Looking at the lead bike presented in the exhibition, we can see how it embodies one of these concepts. The lowrider is decorated with a wooden birch basket on the handlebars that is used to collect berries in the forest. An eagle staff antenna on the back, which is a symbol for integrity and honor of a warrior, and painted buckskin wheel covers that represent a drum and the heartbeat of Mother Earth. The decorations used on the bike draw from cultural traditions that the students learned about in the workshops. Alone, they each have a purpose, but placed together, I see them embody the teaching of respect. The bike they created is a warrior's vehicle, made for a person who respects all living things, and whose sense of respect serves as a drive to continue the struggle to protect the people and the environment. The person who rides this bike understands they must put others before themselves. But the teachings are never standalone ideas. They work in conjunction with each other. In this manner, respect is also tied to love. Because without love for all living things, a warrior cannot find respect for life. Through this presentation, I have shown how the Red River cart led to a series of youth lowrider bikes, how its environmental-friendly technology served as inspiration to teach youth about building bikes as an alternative to fossil fuel burning cars that are polluting our world, And by bringing together the intergenerational group using its methodology of visiting, Minor creates a space of communal learning and bike building where youth participants learn about the indigenous history of the crafts based in these communities. Lastly, using the grandfather teachings, the participants learn about decolonizing and reconnecting with indigenous cultures, learning the lessons necessary to live a good life while working together in community to produce beautiful art, using their body to power the bikes they built and experience the world as they move slowly through space. Right on, thank you.